Force and motion investigating friction. The science standards addressed in this lesson are 3.P.1, understand motion and factors that affect motion. With the objective 1.1, students know that when a force acts on an object, it will result in a change of speed and/or direction. The new generation standards fall under motion and stability, forces and interactions, make observations and/or measurements of an object's motion to provide evidence that a pattern can be used to predict future motion. The first trade book we'll use for our lesson is the fiction book Racer Dogs by Bob Kolar. In this story, 6 dogs participate in a high-energy, exciting road race in cars. We'll use this book during the engage phase because it's high interest, and students will connect this story to their activity during the explore phase, which is observing matchbox cars travel down ramps of different surfaces. The second trade book we'll use is the nonfiction book Motion by Darlene Still. In this book, the author describes different parts of the unit force and motion, and we'll focus on the section on friction. The author defines friction in an elementary, friendly way, as well as gives examples of real-life scenarios that include friction and its effect on motion.
Lesson objective. In our lesson, the student will write about friction as a factor that affects motion. The student will observe friction's role in a motion as cars travel down different surfaces. The student will discuss with a partner the characteristics of different surfaces that increase or decrease friction. For students to show mastery of this content, 80% of the students will receive a score of a 3 on their written response. The teacher will use a rubric specific to this lesson to assess students' responses.
During the read aloud of Racer Dogs, we will focus on these 3rd grade English language arts standards. As we read, we will pause at certain points in the story to ask students planned questions about character motivation and feelings, as well as the meaning of vocabulary. The engage phase of our 5E lesson will be 2 parts. The first part will be the read aloud of the book Racer Dogs by Bob Kolar that will connect to the students' activity during the explore phase. After the read aloud, the teacher will perform a discrepant event for the students. During the event, the teacher will place a pencil into a mason jar filled with rice. The teacher will continue to push the pencil in and out of the jar until enough friction has been produced that the teacher can lift the jar just by holding the pencil.
For the explore phase, students will observe the motion of matchbox cars going down different surfaces. Students will make predictions before testing. They will then measure how far the cars go on the different surfaces, as well as note if the car can or cannot travel easily down the surface. Students will attempt to explain the differences in the car's motion on the different materials. The materials used will be felt, sandpaper, bubble wrap, and then the plain cardboard. Explain. During the explain phase, the teacher and students will have a group discussion. The teacher will introduce the term friction, or allow a student to introduce it that has displayed prior knowledge. During the discussion, the teacher will create an anchor chart with student input. As the teacher creates the anchor chart, students will fill in a note-taking sheet that defines the new vocabulary.
During the elaborate phase, the teachers will have students observe the bottom of their shoes. The teacher will expect students to notice the ridges on the bottom of most of their shoes. The teacher will then ask the students, based on what we learned today about friction, why do you think there are ridges on the bottom of our shoes? The teacher will expect the students to note that a bumpy surface can increase friction, and therefore the surfaces of our shoes help us not to fall when we walk around. Following this discussion, the teacher will instruct students to turn and talk with their neighbor about the studs on soccer cleats on a grass field and the smooth blade on an ice skate on a floor of ice. Students will discuss the presence and role of friction in these 2 different scenarios. Evaluate. For the evaluation phase, the students will complete an individual writing assignment. Their worksheet will show pictures of 2 motion scenarios: a sled on a snow hill and truck tires on a gravel road. To be successful on this evaluation, the students will use the knowledge gained during all previous phases, as well as what they discussed with their partner during the elaborate phase. The students will answer the following question. In each of the scenarios pictured above, how does friction affect motion? How do you know? Include details and use the vocabulary we learned in class today. The teacher will grade their writing using a rubric that's created specifically for this lesson.